Thank you guys for being here. My name is Michael. I'm a co-owner of the monastery here with my wife, Cherith. Um, and yeah, we're really excited to be here and to be able to get to hear from these amazing artists who I believe most of you know to some extent. I met both David and Gaylen probably 3 or 4 years ago, and got to work with them on a few different exhibits over the past few years, and it's been amazing. I've been incredibly encouraged by them and inspired by their stories. And I swear, every time I meet them and every time we do another project, I learn so much more. So I'm actually excited today to be able to hear directly from them and learn even more. So they're a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of yeah. So I want to have Gaylen, Stewart, and David Brady join me up here. I'm not going to introduce them and go through their bios or anything. I'm going to let them tell you who they are, because who better to communicate? Just so you guys know, this is David and this is Gaylen. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. And yeah, I'm just really honored that you shared your art with the monastery and with our people, with our audience. So excited for today. I also want to introduce our kind of moderator today, Alex Catedral. This guy is really cool. I only met him, I don't know, a couple months ago. And he's also been a huge inspiration to me. And he's taught me a lot about just creativity and storytelling. He's a master storyteller, and he has just an incredible way of pulling things out of people that are really significant and deep. So who better to be here to talk or to talk with these artists than Alex. So again, I'm going to let Alex introduce himself, and we're just going to jump right in.
Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate it. David, Galen, it's good to meet you because I haven't actually met you yet. Good to meet you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate it. Before we get started, I just wanted to start with something that one of my favorite people in the world is Mr. Rogers. And something that he likes to do is likes to give a moment of silence to remember what we're thankful for. So I want to give you all a minute to think about who you're grateful for and what you're grateful for. Okay, you can open your eyes. How do you all feel? Good. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a short intro of who I am, and then we're gonna get right into it. Is that okay? Cool. So my name is Alex Catedral. I'm founder of Catedral Collective, and we are a media company that focuses on storytelling. And so our aim and our mission is to bring humanity back to business, and we believe we do that through documentary storytelling, because we believe that everyone has a story to tell, and we're telling. So two things I want to do before we dive into this is I want to define the way that we see authentic storytelling. So we believe story means generosity. And so it's not just about what we give, but it's also about what we receive. And then authenticity is voluntary vulnerability. And so it's our choice to choose to share what's inside of us, or choose to receive what someone else is willing to share with us. And so story then becomes generosity. So today is exactly that. We're going to have these two artists here, David and Gaylen, share their stories, not only through their art around us, but how it all came about. So at the end, we're going to have a bit opportunity to have a Q&A from you all. And so I just want to practice real quick. Who knows David and Gaylen? Can you raise your hand? Yeah, awesome. Okay, nice. And if anyone is willing to share, when you walked around, can you share for a minute what piece stuck out to you? Yeah. Are you okay to? You can either say it out louder. Yeah, you can just say, yeah.
I'm not sure what the title was called before, but it was the big purple painting thing you had back there.
Oh, awesome. What was it that stuck out to you?
I mean, you could say the colors, but I feel like just the whole composition itself, it more to it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate that. Awesome. Okay. So again, thank you both for sharing this space and allowing me to be here with you. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that purple painting. That's yours, right, Gaylen? Okay. Awesome. Okay. But before we get started, I know this is called The Journey. And I know a lot of it also has to do with your journey with cancer. But before we get into that, can you both share who were you before your cancer journey? Like, who are you as artists?
Let's see. Before my cancer journey, I've been an artist since I was a little kid. And I went to a public school, and my mom quickly sent me to a special school on a little yellow bus every Friday so I could have better art classes because I was really restless. But my journey before my cancer journey, my art was all over the place and didn't have any real sticking points until I did a show about 10 years ago about depression. And I did a large installation about people with depression. And that sort of set the stage for me doing installation type of work. And very few shows where I would put, a piece of art in a show. So it kind of flipped everything. And then things changed, of course, once I got sick. My work was always really personal and never really pretty before. So it wasn't like cancer made my work the way it is. It was that way kind of all along to a certain extent.
Okay, before cancer. That'd be college days. I remember as an undergraduate, one of my favorite professors, he would constantly urge us to make paintings that had a powerful image. And I understood that to be the content was powerful. So I made very personalized artworks as well. Paintings were about, whatever I was taking in college, like for my psychology classes. I remember a gerontology class, so I started making paintings of elderly people in wheelchairs and walkers, and because my grandfather was confined to a wheelchair, and my grandparents died of cancer when I was young. And so anyway, I would just use personal imagery like that. I was in Eastern Washington. There was these large turkey vultures that would fly looking for food. And so I combined the turkey vultures with these big black birds with that imagery. And also just as a student, my mother made us all play piano. So these grand pianos started working their way into the imagery as well. So I was just making paintings about growing up and life around me. And I would incorporate my faith as well. I did a lot of paintings that are about Christianity and my relationship with God and Jesus. But I was I have a double major in art history, so I was trying to think of ways I could make artwork that was not just rehearsing or rehashing, art historical imagery. So I found other ways to do that. I did what I called a personal performance. I was inspired by Anselm Kiefer's performances informing the German people about their history with Nazism. So anyway, I started doing these. I would act out these personal performances and take photos of them, and then later would make paintings incorporating these photos. So like a tightrope walker holding a beam was sort of cruciform, and so I would use that, for example. So I would just try to make paintings that were related to what I was wanting to say, but in a new and unique way. And I'd pull from art history or from certain artists that I was inspired by. And so I remember one of the things that one of our professors told us is everybody borrows from somebody, so just make sure it's somebody great. So I endeavored to do that. And so my work went all over the place. If you saw a chronology of my work, it went from like almost sort of graffiti-esque to hyperrealism to really what it is now, and started incorporating lots of materials back then before I discovered I had cancer after grad school. So I had lots of art prior to my cancer.
Wow. You can just keep it. Yeah. For both of you, can you talk about when did you realize you were an artist? Like, what was, I mean, looking at your, yeah, go for it.
You're always by yourself. Well, why?
Yeah.
You're different. When I was a little kid, I could play any instrument. And so when I was like 6 or 7, my mom got me a drum set. There were 9 people in our house, in a 2-bedroom house. My mom got me a drum set. So I was not the favorite sibling for a while. So I was restless, but I didn't consider myself an artist. I didn't call myself that. I loved music, and I grew up in church, and I had to play the offering song as a little kid. And so art to me, I just wasn't around it, you know, very conservative family. And I didn't really discover art, I mean, until I was long out of the house, and then started going to museums and seeing all that. But I knew artists, and I worked at a gallery, so I would never say that I was artist. But I had done a lot of work, and I did realism. I did jazz realism, and I knew how to market. So everybody's like, "You're a good artist." And at a show that did well of jazz, I remember thinking, "This is pathetic," because I could teach somebody to do it. So it wasn't to me, it wasn't saying anything. It was saying something that was already said. And my mom used to always say, whatever you do in life, make sure it helps somebody else. So I was like, hey, the show went well. We sold all the stuff. She goes, so some people with money benefited? So I wasn't going to go say that's what I wanted to do until my art had more personal purpose. Then, I mean, I had shows, I was showing and stuff, but I just felt like, I guess it is with lots of people with careers. My brother's a very successful computer guy, and he says someday they're going to find out I'm a fraud. But so I guess maybe it's artists have it, musicians have it. Maybe you don't think you're that. So I just would say I was creative. But I guess there were too many artists around me that weren't artists, that were calling themselves artists. So it was kind of a weird thing. So it kind of took time. And even now I feel like that's not what I am. I'm a storyteller because my business is a book production. But it's really more of a visual storytelling. So more than being an artist, because I think that's more like 100 years ago, you know, where you only made paintings and they only could go in a gallery. And now it's kind of, you can express yourself and storytell in so many different ways. So hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Same question.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's hard to say. I am not sure I'm still an artist, but I say I am, so I guess I am. when I finally realized that art was not just about verisimilitude or technical ability, but it was it was an opportunity to express yourself and say something and speak through that medium. Maybe that's when I felt like I was becoming an artist. And so probably in second half of undergrad, definitely into grad school, I started realizing that one of my professors sort of criticized my work about being illustrative, and that was a bad thing. And so I was really confused because I didn't know what illustrative versus non-illustrative was or looked like. I think I figured that out over the time, what he meant. So I'm just trying to make artwork that's a little more personalized and maybe not too slick or easily, maybe not too overly obvious. And possibly that's what is art for me. Being really true to oneself and speaking truth through your imagery, trying to avoid being pretentious, not allowing, I don't have any fame, but not allowing fame to get to your head and make you a person that's no longer connected to real life. So all those things kind of added up to, I mean, I was a little bit like David. I didn't grow up, I mean, I grew up on a farm and I never saw art until I was well into college. Never went to a gallery, didn't, you could tell me names of very famous people. Picasso, I had no idea who that would be. Leonardo maybe, but you know, I mean, I could tell you cows, tell you different, but anyway, so, you know, at first I didn't think of myself as an artist. I was just learning. I was learning technical things. I was, you could tell me I was in math class, but I mean, people would say you're in art. So, you know, I might have thought a little bit about that. But, you know, just thinking about how that developed over time, once I had some kind of recognition that this was beyond just beyond technical ability or technique, and it was really more important about what it was saying. And I have to add that I was really fearful of art history. I had a bad experience with history in high school, and so I had an aversion to it. But because I was in a program, I had to take art history, so eventually I did. And I fell in love with it because I had an amazing professor teaching art history, and I ended up getting a double major in art history and painting for my undergrad and grad work. But I learned the difference about like being true to you in art history. Learning what people did and why they did it was a really good basis for trying to do something different, you know, do something outside of what people had done. And that was my motivation, to try to create something that hadn't been created in just that way before. And I felt like I needed all that information to know where to start. And so that also informed the people that I was looking at, the artists that I was really informed by, you know, I don't know, Edward Munch, Matisse, some of the other, you know, Vlaminck, Bonnard, and some of the more contemporary artists like Anselm Kiefer again. So his work is all about German heritage and stuff, and being partially German, I was attracted to that. And also their mammoth, like wall-sized paintings that are extremely textural. And I was just interested in his materials. And another, an American artist, Terry Winters, using science in his art was a very attractive thing to me, making forms that related to science or about scientific ideas or principles and theorems and so forth. And so my work is somewhat about science as well. So all those things kind of add up to making art that's not just, you know, you mentioned pretty pictures or colors, you know, that was sort of, you know, in an academic setting that's kind of beat into you. Don't make pictures that are for somebody's couch, you know, to hang over their couch. Now I don't think that's valid. I would make artwork to hang over people's couches just because I was told not to. But anyway, so for its own sake, you know, just yeah, or paint the couch itself. Yeah, we're both very interested in like mixed media and attaching things to our artwork. So that I think is part of what makes it unique. But just the thinking process, like why do I make art? What is the purpose? What am I trying to convey? Who am I speaking to? How do I say that in a very personalized yet truthful way. And that is a struggle. There is, the kind of that romantic view of the struggling artist. There is a bit of a struggle, and not so much in the painting, because after you've been painting for a while, you kind of know what colors do what and what paint does what, and how you make certain techniques, make a certain kind of quality. But the striving for creating that narrative or that imagery that's surprising and engaging, but yet you still have to follow like the rules of like how to get that from your head onto a canvas or something. So I think at that point, when that would be the transition point where I felt like I was becoming an artist.
It's awesome. Thank you both for sharing. It's really amazing to hear your stories of the origin of where it comes, because you can see why it's so unique. It's just who you are. And so I know we just got a glimpse of that. I know this is called Journey. So in this journey that you're on from, birth to now, in this artist journey, this life journey, what would you say right now that you're reflecting about the most, that has either surprised you or has maybe brought something into a deeper healing, I suppose, for you?
Let's see if I understand the question. Like, where I am now, has art surprised me, or?
Just like in your journey in life, and you being an artist is part of that, but just, was there any part of it in where you're processing in your current life, in this moment, what has surprised you in the journey?
In today's now, that I can't show a lot of it. I can't post it because of the climate. Am I surprised? Yeah, I'm surprised, but it's just reality now. So there's a number of artists I know, and we talk on social media. Well, we used to, but we can't. So we're doing stuff that's, you can't post it. So that's a surprise. I mean, I don't live in North Korea, but it's just hard to kind of wrap your head around it, that you have to censor your work that you want to share, and the rest of it you have to know that that's for maybe when you're out of here. Then maybe you could publish that once you're gone. So that's probably the most surprising. For me personally, on my journey, I'm surprised that my work became so personal. And like before, my work wasn't personal. It was, I did jazz. And then I started to get into what was around me. And I draw every single day. I've done a lot of sketchbooks. And I'm surprised myself by what comes out because I just don't censor it. And when I go back in books, I can see that I'm still the same person I was 30 years ago. I'm kind of mad about the same stupid thing in my book, or I'm going to overcome this thing. No, you're not. You said that in 1985. So, I mean, I know it's a little off topic, but I would encourage everybody to use a sketchbook. Don't call it that, because then you won't draw in it. A journal, a venting book, something where you just let go. And if you scribble, whatever you do in it, you'll start to be able to kind of see a pattern, and you might surprise yourself with what comes out of you just completely out of the blue one day. If you're in an authentic state of mind, if you're not afraid of yourself. Because everybody that I do workshops with on sketchbooking or workbooks, I tell people they're not really meant to share. Because the minute you share it, now you're worried that somebody's going to read it or they're going to know. I'm like, it's maybe your art is there to share, but sometimes your best work is something that is really just for you. Like if you're a musician, I remember I was throwing some art away, and one of my friends got really mad and said I was selfish and why didn't I give that to people? And I said, I know a whole bunch of musicians they've never recorded any of their music. Are they selfish? Their music just goes out the window, you know? So I think with drawing, if you look at it that way, it can be really rewarding, and you can surprise yourself with what you really have inside of you. Sometimes we just don't have something to let it come out. And in my journey, I would be in chemo, or I'd be in radiation, and in chemo you could draw, so I draw every day. But I wonder what everybody else did. They just went home and watched the news. I at least had an advantage where I could, make fun of stuff, or try to make fun of stuff, so the appointment doesn't seem too bad, So
I'm kind of racking my brain to think of what I'm surprised about. So my experience cancer journey was 35 years ago now. So it's not quite as on, right at the forefront of my thinking. But I during the time of my cancer, I really started thinking about my appreciation for being alive. I guess I'm surprised I'm alive. I had stage 4 cancer. I'm here. So that just being here and being able to have the privilege to make art that somebody would even want to look at, just like David said, really it was making art is a very personal thing. Yes, I do put it out there for people to see. But if there was nobody, I would still make art. And it's a very, I don't mean personal and private, like I don't want anybody to be tap into it or exposed to it or see it. I feel like my art is like, especially during my time of cancer, is kind of like worship. I felt like every mark is like an act of personalized interaction with God. And that my spirit would just connect through paint and color and lines and forms and drips. And I mean, just gravity itself is a reminder to me that there's something outside of ourselves. And so I have thought about that for many decades. And so I guess, I don't know if that's surprising or not, but that's just the way I think about my art. And so as I'm making it, it's really like a personal interaction, not necessarily making it for somebody else, or even that I'm making it for some outcome. Although, it gets all complicated because I do have to finish a painting, or there's an end to it, and there is a opportunity to show it. And so there's just many different like nuances to that kind of idea, but that's how I think of my art. So the didactic quality of it is really myself speaking to myself or speaking to God, or but I realize other people are going to see it too, so I guess I'm speaking to them as well, even though I might not be totally conscious about it. And there's just different other things that are involved in it, like other influences, like just things that I've learned over time, in all walks of life or whatever. I think about your talking about music. I also am a musician. I've played music since I was a kid. And so that, how does that factor in? I think at Kandinsky's, relationship to music and his abstract paintings are references to jazz and different, they're even named after musical movements and so forth. So, I mean, I know that's in there. I think about it like when early on, this would be pre-cancer, but I remember taking song lyrics and writing lyrics on the canvas and then making paintings out of them. Or I would, even write my own words and thoughts out, and then just kind of like picking imagery out of clouds or out of stains on the concrete or something, but using the forms of the words and overlapping. And so that content was, the motivation was what was like inspiring that particular artwork. So that was part of the discussion as well. So maybe the surprising part is just like the kind of revelation that happens as it changes over time and how it becomes what it becomes. I try to organize. I'm actually a pretty OCD person, so I am very detailed. So I try to work against that because I want to be more fluid and free and spontaneous. And so I almost work against my own hand. But, that discovery as it kind of, changes over time and starts coming together and making some kind of visual expression is part of, I would put that under the surprising category.
Amazing. Thank you both for sharing. This is a two-part question. You could choose which one or choose both. But So my cousin is currently has stage 4 cancer, and we're the same age, and we grew up together. And one of the hardest things is knowing what to say, how to like have a conversation about the things that she's going through. And when we do finally get there, she like wants to talk about it. She doesn't mind, but there's things that she doesn't want to feel like there's something wrong with her. What I'm curious about is, I know in your bios, you both talk about healing and how art is healing, and how it's healed you both. And then also how sometimes when you don't have words to say, this is how you say it, and that's how you express it. What does healing mean to you both? What has that look like on your journey? And then how does one interact or care for someone who also is in a cancer journey with someone you care about?
Trying to think of how to. Well, when you talk about knowing somebody, years ago I was part of a program called Coach Art, and we were assigned to terminally ill children. So I got all the cancer kids. This is way before I got it. And I was assigned to Children's Hospital, and I couldn't handle it. I was in a deformities ward and cancer ward, and I just couldn't deal with it, or the nurses. And so I had the kids come to my studio, and the kids were, covered up, and the parents wanted to come in. I wouldn't let parents come into the studio. I wouldn't let them do any faith-based thing in the studio. And I had the parents leave because I knew the kids had about 2 months. And most parents told me, I only have one rule for you. I'm leaving my kid with you. No rap music. So the first thing that came on, every student could sing Snoop Dogg by the end of the class. But I didn't know how to deal with these kids. I wasn't trained. I wasn't a nurse. I wasn't anything. But I just needed to make stuff available for them to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about in their art. So most of the kids, didn't make it. But one kid came in, and he was in a hoodie, and his mom didn't like that I wouldn't let her stay, so she left. And the minute she left, he took off the hoodie, and it said, F cancer on his shirt. His mom would have killed him if he had that shirt on. But he had that on for me. And he asked me to help him paint a castle in 3D. So we worked on it. Then he got too sick, and then he passed away. And they asked me to come to the funeral. And I came to the funeral, and they pulled the casket out of the hearse, and the casket was a castle. So this kid was designing his casket. And I'm thinking adults couldn't do that. They were really stoic. So what would I say to these kids? I would just be there to help them draw. Now, when they were done with the drawing and they got sick, none of the parents wanted the drawing, which was kind of strange. So I have them. And the parents weren't really fond of what we were doing because the kid only wanted to be painting, listening to Snoop Dogg. Nothing against the family, but I was a sick kid. And, I don't want to be around a bunch of crying adults and things. I just wanted to go play. You kind of don't care, how late it is. So knowing what to say, most people don't know what to say. And most people, friends left when I got sick. And my family never called. So some people, it's so difficult, and they think you're going to be gone anyway. So they just figure, what if we just go on a trip and then it'll all get fit? It'll be over with. So a lot of my work is about fading away, just literally in front of everybody, fading into nothing. You don't really have anything to say, and nobody really had anything to say, so it just became this sort of quiet journey with my wife. And my dialogue became with the sketchbook. And some people wrote me letters because they didn't know what to say. And this painting back here is my cousin, who's a lawyer. He's very busy. He would get up at 4 a.m. and write me out on a yellow pad these long letters, 5 pages long. And I would get them in the mail and read them when I was in chemo. And I saved them all and later made a piece about that. So he was able to communicate, even though he didn't know what to say. He was just kind of wandering. So some people find a way because they know they should, and other people just don't know. Unfortunately, it leaves people just alone, and then the people around them don't understand it either. So it becomes kind of a lonely journey, but I wasn't alone. I had somebody, I had some great friends that came, and I had my sketchbook. And so if anybody gets sick, it's like, gosh, get them one of those. And just write, I don't know what to say. It always comes out the wrong way, but then that's something you're not alone then. You have that.
What was the first question about healing?
How would you define healing, especially within your art? And
Okay. So my journey is different than David's. So my processing it is probably not quite as in depth as his is. So in 1990, I discovered a tumor and went to my doctor, and it was misdiagnosed as no big deal. So I went away for a year, came back in a year to another physician, to my regular doctor, and he freaked out. It turned out it had metastasized, so the cancer had gone for a full year, had gone into my bloodstream and into my lymph. So he sent me to a surgeon up in Columbus. I was in Ohio at the time. And he, they did all the testing and everything. They removed the tumor, and there was about several weeks to months in between the two surgeries. And the surgery was then scheduled to remove all the lymph nodes in my torso. So I ended up having 46 lymph nodes removed. So thankfully you have lymph elsewhere. So he said I wouldn't be at a huge deficit losing all those. But so they did the tests and so forth. The cancer had metastasized. It had gone through my bloodstream into my lymph system. And so my situation is a little different. During that interim period where people are just like in your life, and I remember people would pray for me. Sometimes even people I didn't know would come up to me and say, God showed me you have cancer, but you're going to be healed. Several. And then a person I did know, kind of. So she said, Jesus took me in a vision into your body and showed me the insides of your body and showed me that you're completely healed. So I came into contact with a doctor who had the same cancer I did, and he was a man of faith also, because I was really conflicted at the time. It's like, okay, well, this person's telling me I'm healed, but I have no evidence of that. I don't know. What do I do? And he gave good advice. He just said, in the same way, he used a story. He said, as Jesus sent the lepers that he had healed to the priests, who were the doctors of the day, to proclaim whether you're healed or not in Judaism of that time period. He said, go have the surgery, go do the procedures and so forth. And if it's true, then, that'll be an answer to that. And if it's not, then we can still do something and work on it and make sure that we deal with it the way we need to. So that sounded good for me. But I mean, there's all this conflicting, the feelings and emotions. My surgeon told me, you guys need to make a will. I might lose you on the operating table. It's a 5.5-hour surgery. So, I mean, there was a lot of intense feelings and fear and anxiety and so forth about it. And I came to a point where, like, I don't know if you know, like, some of the characters of the Old Testament Judaism, but Job, he said, even if God slays me, yet will I trust him. And somehow that resonated with me. And I thought, okay, even if I die, I feel like I've done a lot on this earth. I was a teacher and, and just all that had happened in my life. I came to terms of it when I surrendered it, when I gave like my situation over to God. I felt very comforted and peaceful. People don't know what to say. They have no idea. And I've learned through that situation, and I should probably tell you the rest of the story first. So I did go through the surgery, 5.5-hour surgery. They removed 46 lymph nodes, ran biopsies on all of them. The surgeon came in and said, I sent your information to the Ohio State University Medical Board. 6 surgeons have looked this over. We know the cancer is there. For some reason, it's not there now. We don't know where it went or what happened. And I said, oh, I'm in remission. And then they said, well, no, you're not in remission. And I said, well, what happened to it? And I said, where to go? And they said, we don't have any idea. We just know that it was there and it's not there. And so they canceled my chemotherapy. I went in for blood tests for 5 years. It's 35 years later, it's never returned. So I am completely healed, and it's not in remission, it's just gone. They said it just medically doesn't exist any longer. So I kept all of my documentation, and all my x-rays that are in the other room are all from that time period. They're my x-rays, and I kept the ultrasounds, the sonograms, I kept the CT scans, I kept everything, and it from that point forward became like a grounding point for the direction of my work and just talking about life. I enjoyed like Rembrandt, for example, some Caravaggio, etc., showing light in the middle of darkness, like a hope, a ray of hope. So I used that. I used the idea of death and life and resurrection and healing and sickness to just describe my life and my journey, my spiritual condition, my physical condition. They told me that the lymph nodes were strung like a strand of pearls down your spine. And so when I was trying to figure out how to light my works, I came up with the Christmas lights idea, because it referenced to me, one, they're lit, not out. So I'm lit, not out. And so I used those as a reference to those lymph nodes. But during the time and throughout it and recovery time, people have no idea what to say. They're lost. And I've been on the other side of that, wondering, what do I say to this person? From my own personal experience, I can't speak for David or others, but I want people to just ask me, like, how are you feeling? What are you going through? How terrible is it? Is it okay? What's going through your thoughts right now? I have a good friend who just lost his wife of 62 years to Parkinson's. And he said the worst thing is when somebody passes is that people just avoid you because they don't know what to say. And that was what I felt too my wife would recruit people to come visit me, which was really nice. That was very sweet of her. And but anyway, people don't know. I mean, it's that feeling, it's a weird feeling when you're around somebody who has cancer or any kind of, even a death or anything like that. It's just very difficult. You're afraid you're going to offend them. You don't know what to say. You don't want to trip over your words. And I learned that it's way worse for other people than it is for me. Like, they're all worried and I'm not worried because I'm dealing with it or have come to terms with it. So I think from my perspective, and I try to do this, especially for my friend, because this has just happened to him, but other people too, like, just don't avoid them. Just speak from your heart. You are going to say things that you're going to be afraid that it wasn't, the right timing or the right wording of how to say it. But because you're saying it, it's really the connection. Almost the words don't matter. It's really just that you care enough to say something. And that's part of the healing process too, is that communication. I speak for a living, being a professor, so speaking comes easy for me. I enjoy talking with people. But just even talking about, it's therapeutic. You're going through what you're going through, and people asking questions helps you work through the feelings, the emotions, the thoughts. And I think I think it's all really positive, because you're never going to go up there and just put them down or something. So you're trying your hardest to interact. And I would say just go for it. Don't hold back. It's not going to be weird to that person. It's weird to you, but it's not weird to that person. And all of that, I think, is part of the healing process. The artwork part of it is also part of the healing process. It really is therapeutic. How many of you are artists? And do you do art, and does it work in you some kind of healing or some kind of, I think of it as cathartic or therapeutic. Even if you're not going through something, there's just that same feeling of how it's helping you resolve things. And anyway, so we as artists are, David and I are doing the same thing through our work. It's just embracing what has happened to us or is happening to us. And that's an ongoing thing. Because 4 years ago I had double bypass. So I had two 100% blocked arteries. One's called a widowmaker. I had two of them. My surgeon said that I was only alive because my heart created a bypass artery over several months. So, I mean, we're going, I can tell you so many things that happened to me. Fell off a 2.5-story building, all kinds of stuff. And I'm alive still, so I guess I'm supposed to be here. So all my students, I'm here for you. So anyway, but yeah, it's the same thing. You're just working through these situations. I'll probably start making, paintings about, heart stuff, arteries.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Michael, how much time do we have? A little bit of time? Okay. All right. I'm curious if you're both willing to do this, because you both have created art from your own journey and your own healing journey through cancer. Would you be willing to share with one another that we could witness how each other's art has spoken to you, and how, in what ways has it maybe brought healing to you in your own journey when you look at each other's art?
Well, when you make a lot of art about, in this case, it's cancer, you're curious to see how someone else handled it, as particularly if they are a storyteller like yourself. And so I knew about Gaylen's journey, and I hadn't seen the work in person. So when I first saw it, the x-rays jumped out. I've got lots of x-rays, but I got rid of mine. So, but, and seeing that there was dental with that, I lost all mine from radiation. So it's a part of the journey that maybe people don't think about. But when I looked at the dental x-rays, that whole thing was almost the worst part of, before I went into major surgery, the guy said, "Oh, there's a little thing we need to fix before you go under. You need to have 3 root canals." I'm like, that's worse than cancer to me, 3 root canals. And then that didn't even matter in the end. But looking at his work, his way of expressing it's very authentic, and that's key, is authentic, is his use of color in such a painful theme. I'm kind of envious of it, because it's you find something beautiful in it, where it was hard. It's hard for me to see something pretty in it. But looking at his, it just reminded me of that.
I just became familiar with. I just met David a few weeks ago, a week ago, And this is the first time I've really seen the work in person. And one thing that just strikes me immediately, I'm really drawn to the power of the values. I think a lot. I start analyzing as an instructor as well, but just the power of the values speaks to me and is very expressive and very super strong imagery, and especially all the scratchy lines that are almost like building of strings or threads or marks or scars to make an image. Immediately, I thought of Kathy Kollwitz's work. So the German expressionist artist dealt with death. Much of her work is about her kids passing, and just all the heartbreak and hardship that she went through. So I had that connection immediately on looking at the painting or the drawings and paintings. And I think that they seem like really true emotional experiences, and that also is something that I want to express through my work as well. So I connect that way. There's a lot of breadth, to the work, like very different imagery, but there's always a connection with this linear quality. And I'm not sure, but are these out of your notebooks, the drawings, those pages, or what's in all of these, and like 70 some more of them, I guess?
Yeah, that's about a
90
third
something.
of them, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, first of all, that's an amazing amount of work. I'm like awestruck by how much work that you did during that time period. And it's just really powerful. So I don't know exactly, other than I just resonate with it. It touches my heart at the same time. I just feel very emotional and connected to it. It just seems really, like I use that word honest again. There's a lot of, it feels integrous. And that touches my heart, but also impacts me. It also reminds me, you have memories of what you felt and what you went through. Like, I didn't pass, but there was that feeling like I would. Like, especially when you do something like go make a will, it's like the reality's right there. So, I mean, I have those feelings again. It draws up feelings again of that, those experiences. But I'd say that, just the impact that way, like on an emotional, even spiritual level.
Thank you both for doing that. I was telling Riley that this medium is probably one of the hardest for me to interpret. It moves me, but it's always difficult to know how to interpret it, other than I know that it looks awesome and it makes me feel a certain way, and maybe part of that is there's this fear of trying to understand what that feeling is when I look at it. But it's really awesome to hear you both as artists share that and for us to have insight on that. Lastly, before we go and end here, is there, while after we leave, is there anything that, if there's one thing that we all could get from tonight after looking at everything, what would that be? Would you hope people would receive? And then two, what, if there is, what lens would you encourage us to have on as we're viewing your art pieces?
Well, I think if there's like a takeaway, it would be that everybody is an artist. Everybody can sign a check. Everybody's got a signature it's really unique. And so everybody can express themselves. I just think people are afraid of what people will say, how they express themselves. So the takeaway is just to have courage. I think today people say, who has courage to you? I say comedians. They got a lot of courage. And I try to have courage, that I won't chicken out in the rawness or the authenticity that you have to keep. If you can't be authentic, then come on, you should work in television. I mean, you can't be afraid of it, and mostly you can't be afraid of what others will think, because it really doesn't. I always see, people say, oh, who is your art for? I'm like, my art is it's for people in the future that might go through it, that they might find some commonality in it, and some comfort that somebody expressed something that they felt. I had a number of people come up to me during the show, this was in Seattle, and a number of the people that were there had been sick and were nurses. And this particular final piece here, it's called Someone Else's Bodysuit. And, during the process, you get, I got bald, my neck looked like a hamburger, I lost about 70 pounds. I just didn't like, I just felt one day I could unzip my body and and then I would be fine. I was in somebody else's bodysuit. And a number of people came up to me and said, that's exactly how they felt. And they couldn't figure it out. And then once they saw that, they had the same creepy feeling at some moment in their journey. And so you have kind of an intuition about you're experiencing something a lot of people have experienced and that will experience. A lot more will go through this and worse than me. So maybe they'll get some insight out of that and some comfort, which some people looking at disturbing images don't see there's comfort in it, but other people do. So.
My suggestion would be for you to maybe not think of yourself as an artist, just living life and using visual means to record your life or express your life. I think most people aren't artists because, as David said, they're afraid. Maybe you've been told when you're younger that maybe that was terrible or you're not an artist. And honestly, everybody has feelings and thoughts and things they want to talk about, and you're just doing it visually instead of through with words too, but visually. And it really is, unless you're trying to make something good or or for some kind of accolade or something, I think that's where the pressure comes from. And if you're just making, you may not have ever drawn before. I was telling somebody earlier that really of my students, many of the STEM people do really well in art. Because one, they don't think of themselves as artists. They've always wanted to do this, and they can follow directions, for just learning techniques and stuff. So they're very open. And so maybe you don't think of yourself as an artist, but it is really fulfilling to express yourself, even if it's complete abstraction. That's maybe harder to understand for a lot of people because you feel intimidated. It's like understanding jazz, but it really is like super fun to express yourself through color and marks and so forth. And you don't have to know how to draw for that. I mean, you can learn how to draw, but so I would just make stuff that expresses how you're feeling. It's almost like art therapy, and it's just super fulfilling, and it helps you work through your thoughts and work through things. And those of you who are artists, I would say, try not to let yourself or other things get in the way of making art. If you've ever been to grad school or whatever, it's a unique situation where you're just spending all your time and hours and hours, living at the studio. And once you're out in the real world, it's not like that anymore. You got a job, and many of you have families, and everything kind of gets in the way of making art. And so it has to be something that I prioritize. I have to force myself. It seems weird to say that you force yourself to make art, but there's a real practical aspect to it. If you don't, then you'll just think about it all the time. And I guess that's art as well, imagining and thinking. But if you want to get it out of your head onto, paper or a canvas or something, you just have to, there's some practical things you got to do. And so fighting for your time, making the time, prioritizing it. Don't lose your relationships over it, but, at least that's my suggestion. But think about I just want to express myself. I'm not making art. I'm doing something that's going to express what I'm thinking and feeling. And if somebody else is touched by it, moved by it, happier because of it, I want my work to make people's lives better. If they get anything out of it, I hope they have hope. I hope that they have some kind of connection that is a good experience for them. And I don't necessarily try to paint that way, but that's my desire when it's all said and done, is that somebody's life is made better. And I would just encourage you to just go for it. Like, just do anything. It can be scribbling. I mean, we all did scribbling when we were younger, until we were told it wasn't art, and then we quit scribbling. But there's lots of people who scribble and make a living at scribbling. So anyway.
Well, thank you everyone for being a part of this. Thank you both for sharing your heart and being vulnerable and sharing your art as well. If I may, I'm going to process real quick what just happened. For me, we talked about, you talk about rapping and hip hop, and there's this line from Macklemore. One of my favorites is he says, "The greats weren't great because at birth they could paint. They were great because they paint a lot." And listening to both of your journeys and myself, like music and visual artists and things like that. I just had a 5 week. We just had our second child, and so I'm like in the midst of it all, and hearing that you both in your own cancer journeys were creating. There was no excuse for not creating, and it was almost not almost. It was this necessity to able to survive and to live, and I hope that as I have gotten, I hope that you all have gotten as well. Like that, it's our opportunity to be able to be courageous, to tap into who we are and who we're meant to be. And as you can see here, I hope that you've gotten what they've been able to create and give to us is also a way for us to receive and accept healing as well as they have done that on their own. And so that's our opportunity to do that for others. So tonight, as we end this, take time to look at the artwork, and then also take time to ask questions and interact with Gaylen and David and go more in depth. But yeah, thank you so much again for listening, and thank you both for interacting with us, and thank you for having us. Thank you.